everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for stopping by. I have had a tremendous response to last week's video, especially it being the first one. Just fantastic. I can't thank you enough for all of the feedback that I've gotten. It has been fantastic. Thank you. Now, to go back to the tease that I did in the description from last week. Underwater basket weaving, don't do it. Just that's really all you need to know about how to do underwater basket weaving. Just don't. Go buy a basket that's already woven. Do it that way. So today, what we are actually going to do and actually going to talk about is a commercial that I did when I was a child. Space Center Houston, that's the commercial. And we are going to watch it here together. I did several commercials as a child, and this, I think, is the pinnacle, the peak of my child acting. So we are going to watch that now, and then I'll share some stories afterwards. All right, let's watch.
And that was my trip to Wormtown.
Douglas, tell the class what you did yesterday.
I went to outer space. First,
I actually got to keep that
space
jumpsuit.
From the Port of Space Show, I tried to save a lost satellite, but it got away.
I have a story about that chair. I'll tell it after the.
Suddenly I was surrounded by aliens.
I'm going to have to speak to your parents.
But I left them on the moon.
But I left them on the moon.
Space Center Houston. It's the closest thing to space on Earth.
Oh, fun times. Well, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it? So, some stories from that shoot. We had the run of Space Center Houston, which is part of that complex of the Johnson Space Center there in Houston. We had the run of that place for 2 days, and then we did some additional shooting elsewhere. But we had a lot of fun shooting there. One story that I actually mentioned that I would talk about, that chair, that pneumatic chair. The first day that we were there, that was the first thing that they wanted to do. So they got me in the chair. And I'm going to tell you this for background. I believe I mentioned that I'm on the autism spectrum, and I also have dyspraxia. So I was already on sensory overload at that point, doing a commercial, which I had done several prior to this, but it was my first starring gig. So I'm excited. I'm excited to be at Space Center Houston. Never been there. And it was just opening, and I was getting to do a lot of stuff that people wouldn't be able to do, and just the chair itself was pneumatic, so the sound messed with me, plus the jostling of the chair, it just, all of that was a sensory overload. So I had a meltdown. Well, problem is, time is money, and they are worried, oh my gosh, can this kid actually do it? So they go to my mom and ask her, can your son actually do it? Do we need to hire another kid? So she comes to me, asks the same thing, and we have a good talk. And I say, yes, I do want to be here. I do want to do this. So we decide to come back to that chair later. We do all of the different shots there, and even the actors who play my parents, I met them when they came in to play my parents while we were in the break room watching the live feed from NASA. they were training for an extra vehicular or spacewalk mission to repair something on the Hubble, I believe. And the best way that they can do that is to do it underwater and pin down exactly how they're going to do the repair. So it's a simulation. But that's the closest thing we have on Earth to simulating the weightlessness in space in that framework. So we did all the different shoots, over the course of that day and then the next day. The end of the day, the last thing we film at Space Center Houston is that chair. And I had a different attitude this time. I'm like, I'm not going to let this thing beat me. Let's do it. I've had a blast here at Space Center Houston. This is fantastic. I've loved this. Let's do the chair. So they get me in. I'm all excited and everything. We're ready to go. And we do it. And you see the end result. The fun and excitement and joy on my face, that is not acted. That is real. I had a huge blast doing that. I know I've been saying I had a blast. Did you have a blast? Yes, I did. I did have a blast. I blasted off. So that was a lot of fun just by itself. And then since that was the end of the shoot there at Space Center Houston, and they were thrilled that they got the shots that they needed, had a round of applause as I left the chair and got off the platform. And of course, I'm an actor. I bowed, but no, it was a lot of fun. And me being a performer, that type of feedback, I'm like, hey. So that was a lot of fun. That is probably one of the big highlights to take from that commercial. I ran into the actress who played the teacher at an audition later, probably about a year later. She recognized me. I didn't recognize her at first. And then she said her first line, and I immediately recognized her. Didn't remember her name, but you work with people for 2 days, you're not necessarily going to remember their names. So those are just some anecdotes from that shoot. It was a lot of fun, and that whole part of my life was just a lot of fun. I've been incredibly blessed in my years. So next week, let's talk about what we're going to do next week. Next week, going to take you on a tour of my loft because there have been some things that have changed since some of you may have seen it on the Retro Man Cave Extra Caverns COVID live streams. And I can go into more detail than just a 90-second little blurb. So I'm going to take you on a tour of the loft. Won't be that long of a tour. And also talk about why I love or love really vintage and retro technology and computers and all the ins and outs of that. So that's what we will cover next week. Come on back for that. Should be a lot of fun. And you'll get some more history about me. You'll get to know me a little better. I feel like that's kind of what we need to do right now is you get to know me and we build that. So come on by next week. While you're here this week, drop some comments down below. If you want to know what that picture that I used in last week's video is and what the significance of it is, feel free to ask that in the comments. if you have any other questions, criticisms, anecdotes, puns, whatever, I don't care. Put it in the comments. But while you're in the comments section, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so that way you know when I put a new video up, which should be every Friday. So hopefully you will get to know that, and I will see you next week.